Today, we are honored to have a guest whose career is defined by curiosity, clarity, and the ability to demystify the complex, Hari TN. With over 2 decades of experience in the startup ecosystem, Hari has played a key role in scaling 5 ventures across diverse sectors, leading them to successful exits. Some even becoming highly profitable unicorns, and one even going public on NASDAQ. Beyond startups, he's an accomplished author, a trusted VC advisor, and a mentor to founders navigating the chaos of scaling. Now, as executive chairman of Steerworld, he's driving innovation in materials transformation and building solutions that enhance lives and rejuvenate the planet. Welcome to Full Circle, Hari. We're excited to have you here. Thank you so much. This is truly an honor to be speaking to you over here.
Likewise, Chaitanya, thank you for inviting me. It's an honor to be doing this podcast with you.
So I'll actually jump right into it. And look, we've had a short conversation earlier, and I'll kind of pick up the thread from there to get going. So one of the things that you spoke about the last time when we were talking was that somewhere wellness and well-being of an individual depends, or rather starts from the choice of company you join and the role you kind of take up, right? Which also means that employees bear significant responsibility of their well-being from the very start. Is it fair to place that kind of burden on the employees and so on and so forth? So, would love to hear your thoughts on that to begin with.
Great, Chaitanya. I think let me just lay out three central thoughts that we can just build on as we progress. The
Sure.
first is that, well-being and mental health, I truly believe, are the responsibility of both the employee and the employer. And
Mm,
more senior a person is in a company, the greater the responsibility of the individual concerned for his or her well-being and mental health. The second central thought that I would like to place on the table is that not every company can be expected to be people centric or people first. Every
mm,
company is different, and each of the companies has their own set of strengths and their own ways of creating a great organization. Some are amazingly good at strategy, some are amazingly good at operations, some are amazingly good at financial management, some others may be amazingly good at using the people lever. But it's expecting that everybody cares as much about people and uses the people lever to create excellence is a bit unfair, because just as all of us as individuals are different and bring different strengths to the table, similarly companies also are different and bring different strengths to the table. The third central thought is that well-being and mental health in an organization, an employee's well-being and mental health, is a bit of a nuanced and complex topic,
mm,
because there are several issues of performance, accountability, stress levels related to performance, and performance is important. So, what constitutes well-being and mental health? What is the situation where an employee is being unfairly treated? And what is the situation where the stress is an essential part of work itself? Is the third
mm,
central thought. I truly believe, that the choice of a job really plays a very significant role in an individual's well-being and mental health. I think, all of us come with different strengths. So if we are able to pick a role in a company that plays to our strengths, then I think there is a natural, inclination tendency to be happy at the workplace. If you end up doing something every day for 8, 9 hours, something that you don't enjoy, something that you're not really good at, then I think that invariably places, a lot of burden on an employee, a lot of stress on the employee. So it's therefore very important to be able to pick the right job. And the problem with not picking the right job or picking the right job has been often that, you always aspire for material comfort, material benefits, high
mm.
compensation that are truly valued in society. And yet, that's not what you are after. You're good at something, and that something is not getting you the highest form of compensation. So I think that dichotomy often results in picking jobs that we know we are not good at. And
Got
the
it.
last one I'd like to put out is that, most of us, are ambitious in life. We have very strong aspirations to
Mm,
so-called success, and success as measured by by most individuals and by society at large. So, for example, the moment one of us, I mean, a person decides to join a top-notch business school, that's the day you've already signed up to be a part of a very ambitious group of people, and there's going to be cutthroat competition. And after that, you can't expect, life will be very easy for me and companies will give me so much of, work life balance. And after that, after you finish after you, at the point of graduation from the business school, now you aspire for a job at a management consulting company or a venture capital firm, or, for example, a Tiger Global funded startup. And if you expect that there's going to be no stress, then you're completely mistaken, because you further joined this very small subset of absolutely ambitious individuals, and you've chosen a life of being in the rat race. So I think individuals also play, they to a large extent, I think the stress and is about how they manage their own life. Companies can do a little bit, but not a great deal, in my opinion.
Absolutely. So, Hari, I actually completely agree with that, right? Like, I think if your job is feeling unnecessarily stressful, if you think that you're putting more hours than you would like to, no matter what you do on wellness, it's not going to suffice from, from a perspective of improving your health overall, sort of a thing. Speaking of people joining these schools and then expecting something else, we've all seen the IIT Baba story that came up recently, right? So, I think that's a very ripe example of that. Hari, one other perspective just from this. So, I mean, obviously, it's a two-way street. So, first, would you think that employers also have the responsibility of making sure that the guy who's coming in has the ability to handle that kind of stress, is ambitious enough, will be able to sustain that ambition long enough? And do you think talent acquisition teams today look for anything beyond skill and qualification fitment and actually say that, look, I mean, they do look at cultural fitment, but do they actually go into the depth of saying that does this person have the ability to handle the rigor of the job, the entire long-term ambition for this? I mean, would love to hear the employer side in that perspective, right?
Got it. So I think, the recruitment processes in any company are not perfect, but I think the
Yeah.
aspiration and dream for every company is to find people who can perform on that role and succeed long term. So, for example, a place which is a startup, a very rapidly growing startup where chaos is prevailing all around, where people are expected to be entrepreneurial or intrapreneurial and take ownership and deal with chaos, and not just deal with chaos but thrive in chaos. The
Mm,
recruitment process is expected to identify individuals who do well in such an environment. So I
mm,
think that process is very much in place, or very much, I mean, a lot of companies at least try to get this right, but they
mm,
fail. It's not off that they can get it right all the time. And you end up with people who can't cope, for example, who are not the right choices for that role or for that culture in that company. So I think sometimes when you make the wrong choices, then you end up, with a lot of grief. And sometimes, and more often, you need to let go of those employees. So I keep saying, what, companies need to pay a lot of attention to the hiring process, because if you hire well, then you can manage well. Once you've got a wrong person on board, it's extremely difficult to make that correction, especially at senior levels. So our
mm.
companies do make an attempt, try to get better every day, but the whole process is an imperfect process and does not always work well.
Got it. But Hari, I'm also assuming that in the same conversation, like I think the fitment and the whole point of did you choose the right job should be something that would happen more often at junior levels or fresher levels. Do you see this happening at senior levels as well? I mean, ideally, I would think that somebody with 10 years of experience should know what they're getting into, sort of a thing.
Agree with you. I agree with you,
Mm,
which is that somebody who's 10 years with 10 years experience or even more than that is expected to understand the world much better than those who are starting their careers, and must understand what they're getting into, and must
yeah.
ask those smart questions, even if, for example, the talent acquisition team member does not evaluate correctly, does not evaluate them for those parameters, ability to fit into the culture of the company. The individuals concerned must figure out what a day at the workplace looks like,
Mm,
and should be able to ask the right kind of questions that can then
absolutely.
help them figure out whether this is the right kind of a company for me or not.
Got it, got it. So, switching from that to like where we started, right? Basically around employee benefits. What's your perspective on how companies actually think about employee benefits, employee wellness, healthcare, and stuff? Is it more of a tick in the box? How should they basically reimagine this? I mean, I know you spoke about it depends on the state of the company and all, but in general, do you think how does the typical HR think about the benefits part? Is it just from an acquisition perspective that it makes the company more attractive? Is it just saying that, look, tick box, I have this, or is there general care sort of a thing? Would love to just hear some thoughts on that as well.
At some level, the talent acquisition folks are also sales folks,
Yeah.
and the people that they're looking at, prospective employees, are their customers. So it's a simple formula, which is that you need to know your customer well, you need to know your target segment well, you need to know what they care about, you need to know what will keep them motivated and inspired at your workplace. So you need to understand that. So let me just illustrate this with examples. So, for example, the Tatas, especially about 30 years back, probably, or 25 years back, when I joined the Tatas, very clearly they were a benefits-focused organization, which
Mm,
is they did
mm,
not pay a great deal of cash. But if you lived in Jamshedpur or any other cities where they operated, they would provide you a company house. In Jamshedpur, it was a free company house. and you would get a very lavish house. Bungalows were available in abundance. You would get medical treatment at the company hospital free for yourself and for your dependents, free, irrespective. You don't. There's no upper limit at all. You can get, the company would spend 100 lakhs probably on you if it is necessary, if you're going
Mm.
through a very bad disease. So these kind of benefits were provided by companies like the Tatas. But with young India's demographic profile being pretty young and post-liberalization, there were several companies which did not probably believe in the philosophy that the Tatas believed in, and
Mm.
because not because they were bad and Tatas were great, it's just because they realized that those kind of benefits don't really matter for their employees.
Mm.
Look at a call center, look at a company like Infosys, where the average age is 25 years. Who would want to contribute to a superannuation fund that they will get after when they reach 60 years? Who cares for a superannuation fund?
Got it. Mm.
In that these kind of companies, 25-year-olds don't care for it. They want to be paid
Mm.
more cash upfront. Now, the choice of benefits and the approach to benefits is a strategic choice that companies make based on the kind of employees they wish to attract. And I give you an example. Most of these companies that attract youngsters pay a lot in cash. They don't care a lot
Mm.
about benefits. And but what they've really done is they figured out that some benefits are absolutely essential and have become table stakes. For
Mm.
example, it's difficult for an individual to get insurance cover at the same premium as what a company can get for them through a group
Correct.
insurance policy. So,
Correct.
for example, an accident insurance, life insurance,
Mm.
medical insurance, those have become table stakes. So
Mm.
those are being provided by pretty much every company. But beyond that, other different companies can make choices. But
Got it.
more and more companies I have seen have been moving towards, all cash kind of a compensation with minimal benefits. And the reason is, just take an example. Let's say we
Mm.
provide a benefit where your children get, a scholarship for going to college. If they get admitted into some good college, they get a scholarship. But what happens to people who don't have children? Why should they be penalized? They will say,
Mm.
I don't have children, but why are you providing benefits that are so dependent on a person's family circumstances? So why don't you give me cash? So that's how it works, which is that everybody gets cash. Cash is a common denominator and they can choose to spend it on avenues that are relevant in their family context. Accepting the table stakes that I talked about is something that everybody gets, which is insurance kind of stuff.
Understood. But Hari, here's a question, right? I mean, and I mean, you brought up Tata, and it's well timed in that perspective. I've always had respect for how Tata thinks. I mean, the company thinks about everything from corporate social responsibility to healthcare to employees and so on and so forth. Um, I mean, some of these things like superannuation, for example, Tata has, I understand, has this thing that if you retire from Tata, your healthcare for the next 20-25 years is also covered by the company, right? It's almost like a government job in that perspective.
Yes.
And I'm asking out of ignorance, do some of the Tata Group companies, for example, TCS, where I would assume that there are a lot of youngsters coming in, do they follow the same policies, or as you
No,
gave
no, no,
they
no.
don't? Okay,
So,
okay,
new age Tata companies have figured out that what applies for Tata Steel and Tata Motors is irrelevant for TCS. So,
got it.
TCS has, tuned their entire approach to benefits along the lines of what Infi or anybody else they compete with do.
Got it, got it. I mean, they're competing for the same talent, so it does make sense for them to sort of go through it. So I know you've touched this in the conversation already, Hari, but and I understand that. I mean, you've had a long and varied career. There would be a lot of factors about the company's performance, what kind of employees you're hiring, all the strategic aspects. Have you had a personal philosophy beyond this strategy in terms of how employee wellness should be looked at? Are there any non-negotiable principles or pillars for you that have guided your decision, and how have you kind of evolved this over the years? Would love to understand your journey over the past decades in terms of how you've looked at benefits earlier and how that perspective has changed, right?
Yeah, so Chaitanya, the way I have seen it is that 20% of employees' wellness and mental health has
Hmm.
got to do with benefits. Probably not even 20%, maybe 10%.
Got
Between
it.
80% and 90% depends upon a host of other factors,
Hmm.
and those are things that tend to get ignored a bit. And some of them are, for example, have you created a culture of performance? And that's very important because a culture of performance involves some degree of stress on the part of employees as well, because they're going to be held accountable. They're going to be held accountable if they don't deliver results and outcomes. While some degree of support, coaching, training will always be provided, the employees need to deliver outcomes and be accountable for those. If you hold people accountable, that's when a bit of stress begins. And I think life requires a bit of stress, because without that bit of stress, none of us will be able to perform, whether at work or outside of work.
Mm.
Complacence sets in very quickly. So, some degree of stress is a very positive thing for all of us. It's only when it goes beyond a tolerance limit or beyond a level that people struggle with it. So, I
Mm.
think, but different level people have different levels of tolerance for stress. So, my belief is that you must create a fair workplace where there is no politics, completely apolitical, where there is strong culture of performance, where you're able to differentiate and discern between performers and non-performers. You're able to differentiate the kind of rewards that you hand out to performers and non-performers, and you're very transparent about it. To me, that begins to create strong performance. So it's about, competence, which comes through right hiring, plus accountability equals performance. And performance is what begins to drive trust. If you don't
Got it.
perform, your manager, your colleagues will not trust you. So trust comes only from performance. I will never trust somebody who does not deliver performance. And trust is about, can I believe you to deliver something? So, performance drive trust. And only after you trust someone will you begin to empower that person. So, empowerment comes again only after trust. And after empowerment, you are able to get results at scale. So, to me, this is the mantra, which is
Mm.
competence plus accountability creates performance. Performance in turn engenders, trust. Trust creates empowerment, and empowerment results in scalable results. And
Understood.
this is not entirely a stress free process. There will be some
Mm.
degrees of stress, but tolerable stress. So I think that is very critical. If you don't get this piece right, you can goof up on any of the points I told you. For example, if you hire people who are not competent, you've already begun a journey of creating a place where people are not comfortable doing what they are doing, not happy with doing what they are doing. And there will be lots of subsequent issues about how do you manage such people. If you don't hold people accountable, there will not be there'll be complete confusion, and there will be no delivered performance. To me, this is the whole thing. If you manage well enough, then you're able to manage employees' well-being and mental health. To
Understood.
me, if you manage this loop well, because you know what, this is the difficult part. Every
Yeah.
time we try to find an easy answer,
Mm.
benefits never ever create, so-called mental health and well-being. I
Mm.
mean, there's no way benefits have any great impact on that. I can give you gym memberships, but you know what? Some employees don't want gym memberships. They say, "Give me cash. I don't want a
Mm.
gym membership. I don't care about physical health. I rather walk in the evenings at home." So those benefits are all not going to change the game for you.
Mm.
People come to
Mm.
a place so that they can do what they're really good at. They can make some mistakes if they genuinely try, and they're able to innovate and do their best every day. That
Got
is
it.
what creates a great workplace.
Got it. No, so Hari actually agree with that, right? Like I've seen organizations where, they identified that there's some level of mental health stress. Maybe there was a suicide or so in the past. They introduce an EAP platform. It's not like things change, right? It's not like suicide actually
Correct.
stop. I think in a lot of cases,
Absolutely.
employees are not even aware of what benefits are available. The engagement is extremely low, so it's just there for the heck of being there, but it's not really making an impact in that sense.
Yeah.
Hari, I want to actually go into a very maybe an actual real life example. In your experience, have you engaged with an organization where the culture, the performance, the accountability has been the antithesis of what you just spoke about? And then how
Yes.
did you kind of drive that transformation? Don't name the organization, just tell us about
Yes.
what that experience was, what you did, and so on and so forth.
Absolutely. So I have come across, companies where this model was not perfect.
Mm.
Some cases where this model was not applied at all, almost at all. It was just 10%. And some places where it was about 50%. And I think the places where it is maybe 10%, that kind of a company needs a major cultural overhaul, major
Mm.
transformation.
Mm.
And the problem with transformation programs is that they don't always succeed or rarely succeed, especially in large organizations,
True.
because it is about fundamentally redefining who you are and what you do. So,
Mm.
culture change is like changing an individual's personality. Many times they don't succeed, but a strong leader, who's able to envision and who's able to execute culture changes in a fair and transparent manner, will be able to drive the change that will get this company to operate in the model along which I talked about. CAPTER is the acronym I would call that. So I have played parts in companies to drive this kind of transformation. Currently, in my current role, I'm doing this, as well.
Mm.
And
Any specific like so it so happens, Hari, that I'm a very to do kind of a guy. Just want to understand like what were the exact things that you did that you're doing in some of these places where you, for example, seen that it's 10% there and it needs to get better. Would love to understand like are there conversations with the leaders? Did you actually go to the extent of saying that look, we need to actually shuffle the entire organization? There are so many people who don't fit the role. Like how did you go about that? If you could just give us this
multiple
thing.
levers. So a
Got it.
problem like this cannot be handled just by one lever. There are
Mm,
multiple levers. You need to quickly figure out who are the leaders who are capable of adjusting and going with the new culture, who will become champions of the new culture, and there will be leaders who will be a drag, who will never be able
mm,
to cope up. You need to take some of these hard calls and take them quickly. And once you take some of these hard calls, it sends a message across the rest of the organization what kind of a company we want to build. So, those who are with you, those who believe that the kind of transformation you're driving is very essential, they will begin to rally behind you. Those who will find it difficult to cope, in fact, they begin to voluntarily move on. So, that's one
yeah.
lever. The
Yeah.
second is that you need to meet teams. You need to go and meet teams who are on the ground. Do team meetings to figure out what's happening, what's not happening. And I've identified that there are, three sets of problems that you need to deal with. The first set of problems I would call, the horseshoe nails are missing.
Mm,
And what I mean by horseshoe nails is that many battles are lost not because of wrong battle strategies, but you fail to stock up on horseshoe nails, the smallest element in a battle. Forget the horseshoes and the horses. You just don't have those horseshoe nails. You have horses and horseshoes, but if you don't have horseshoe nails, you can't take the horses out.
got it.
So organizations sometimes get eaten from inside like cancer because of those missing horseshoe nails that nobody really highlights.
Mm,
And those horseshoe nails are typically interfunctional interfaces, people not being proactive and taking ownership, feeling a deep sense of helplessness rather than being in control, saying that I can transform something that's broken. So these are the horseshoe nails which you must very quickly fix. The
got it.
second are the moderately strategic issues where you must bring in clarity, get people to make the right kind of choices, and you can set that up quickly. And the last is, the really difficult problems. And the
Mm,
really difficult problems is what you need to prioritize and get the entire management team to rally around. For
got
example, you
it.
could do that by extracting the six most important problems in the company and call them platinum projects and get a very tight review around those. Identify a sponsor for each of those, identify a program manager, identify a team that will work on those and tightly review it in a manner that that problem gets solved. And you
Got
need
it.
to solve for all the problems. And there are strategy related choices, there are people related choices, everything. You need to bring every lever at your disposal to transform the organization. But
Mm,
above all, you must create tremendous amount of trust about the intent, the fact that you're driving change with the right kind of intent, not with any ulterior motive, the fact that you're driving everything for the good of the organization. That is such a powerful foundation, because without that foundation people won't rally behind you. But if you create the strong foundation, if people see it, they are very happy, taking making those uncomfortable choices. They're very happy being given brutal feedback. They're very
mm,
happy being felt, held accountable in the past when they were not accountable. But today you suddenly hold them accountable, but they know the intent is good and they know that there will be some degree of support forthcoming. Then I think people will change. So
got
this is
it.
a very
Got it.
intense transformation program where that one leader needs to play a
Mm,
very important role. And the real life examples, Hugh
mm,
Gerstner at IBM transformed IBM one man. There's a case of Dr. J.J. Irani, Tata Steel.
mm,
Post liberalization, the company was grappling with a set of problems. 70,000 people producing 3 million tons of steel. Terrible, because 3 million tons of steel were produced by a 700-person steel plant in Japan and in the
got
US.
it.
So the company had to do something. It needed a very, very clear thinker and a terrific person in terms of execution. So Dr. Irani was brutal in executing this plan. So I think very strong leaders can drive transformation and cultural transformation.
Got it. So, Hari, actually, now a question that I should have probably asked you earlier. In like the example that you gave, and you spoke about the four levers that kind of go into it, where does the transformation problem statement start from? Like, what is the typical problem statement that will emerge in this kind of a situation, and then accordingly, how do you quantify the impact that has happened, sort of a thing? I'm sorry, we're going a little up and down, but I hope you're getting where I'm coming from. Like what is the problem statement that the CEO comes to you with, and how is the measurement of success on that?
So, let's take a case of Tata Steel. Dr.
Mm,
Irani was an insider. He was a joint managing director, was appointed as the managing director.
mm,
And when he, took on the, role of the CEO and the MD of the company, that was the time it coincided with the world changing
mm.
post-liberalization. So he knew what needed to be done. And he had no qualms about going about doing that systematically. And the
Got it.
good thing was that he was ruthless. If he
Mm,
had been too empathetic with people, saying that, we just cannot lay off people, then nothing could have been done. But he
mm.
still stuck to the broad philosophy of the Tatas, which is a company which was employee centric. So he came out with, employee separation plans, voluntary separation plans that were fair,
Mm,
in the sense that they were not ruthless. They were
mm.
pretty fair, separation plans. So he executed that, still sticking to the broad Tata values in terms of being employee centric. So I think if you're an insider and if you're a smart person, you are able to figure out what's not working.
Got it.
And if you're an outsider, like an Lou Gersner who came in from the outside, you need to be smart. You need to be able
Mm,
to pick up the signals, what's not working, what's working. And if you're a smart leader who understands the multiple levers of organization building, and those levers could be around strategy, operations, financial management, people, around all those levers, if you have a decent, balanced understanding, it won't take you long to figure out what's wrong. And
got it.
once you know what's wrong, you have to operate and unlock all these levers, actions along all these levers with a sense of urgency. So, what you need is an absolute sense of speed and urgency in executing these changes and getting
Absolutely.
people to rally around those changes.
Got it. Hari, that's amazing. And I completely, I mean, I've spent some time in consulting. I've been part of HR transformations, and I can see from the mistakes we did and the good things that we did that everything you say makes so much sense. Hari, I'm going to switch a little bit
Yeah.
from transformations, wellness to healthcare. Would love to kind of hear your thoughts in terms of the general healthcare ecosystem in the country. Where do you think the gaps are? What are the things that we need to fill? You can talk about this either as an individual consumer or as an employer who's seeing the healthcare that is being meted out to your teams and so on and so forth. But would just love to understand your perspective on where you think the gaps in healthcare are. Given we are a healthcare company, that's a question that'll be a miss if I don't ask.
Chaitanya, honestly, I don't know a lot about India's healthcare ecosystem, but I can
Okay.
broadly say from whatever I've seen, and like any observant citizen, I can say that there is an amazing healthcare system for the rich people in India.
Mm,
The rich in India can access a healthcare system that is far, far superior to what is available in the developed countries, whether
absolutely.
developed countries like the UK, USA, Australia. The rich people in India can access a healthcare system far better than what is accessible to many citizens in these developed countries.
Mm,
But the healthcare for those who are at the bottom of the pyramid or even the middle of the pyramid, I think is completely broke. At least for the bottom of the pyramid is completely broke because
mm,
the government ecosystem is not working well enough. So these
absolutely.
are individuals who don't have access to good healthcare. And even the middle of the pyramid, the problem is that even if they begin to earn enough to keep their, lives on at home and generate some amount of surplus, even if there is one life illness in the family,
Yeah.
one single life illness in the family, their entire life savings get wiped out, which
Correct.
means there is no way for them to be able to insure against such a problem. So I think availability of insurance, for the middle of India and the bottom of India is a difficult problem, but I know that it's not easy for insurance companies also to take this kind of a risk. So I don't know what products can come up that are innovative enough to be economically viable for the middle and bottom of India, and yet don't put insurance companies at distress.
Good. No, no, I think that's absolutely fair, Hari. And I think sometimes we, as the more privileged people, still tend to abuse the healthcare system, say what's happening, sort of a thing. But I think as I mean, we've had some. I had a conversation with some Western folks based out of US and other countries, and I realized that actually, while the quality at an individual episode level might be great, the access and all is a big problem, no matter how much
Correct.
money you have over there. So we should actually be grateful for where we are. So Hari. I mean, while we're talking about how the employee's fitment plays a role, how the company's selection plays a role,
Yes.
off late there have been this news about either health-related deaths or suicides that have happened in the workplace, and the employees have kind of blamed the company for it. Even if they haven't, the entire population has come back and said that what the hell is the company doing when there are such kind of things happen? And it's happened with some of the best brands in the country. Would love to hear your thoughts both on the employer's responsibility, the public outcry, and the employee side of it, right? So please go ahead and share those thoughts with us.
Yes, a death always invites public wrath, and that is unsurprising. But the way I would think about it is that if there is a death, it's a red flag for a company. The company should figure out what is really missing, what has led
Mm,
an employee to take this extreme step. I can
mm,
understand, stress at the workplace. I understand the pressure to perform, but I think a company has to figure out what has led an employee to take this extreme step. To me, that's a big red flag. If I were at the helm of this company, I would
mm,
figure out what is really broke. To me, normally expectations of performance and accountability often don't result in a person taking his or her own life. It is
mm,
something much more than that, which is putting unfair pressure on people, being brutal, use a wrong choice of words every day, harassment every day. So, under the guise of performance expectations, there is high degree of harassment. To me, this is poor leadership.
mm,
So people who demonstrate such extremities of poor leadership should be spotted. The company should put in place mechanisms where they can spot some of these. Forget a death. Even if a death doesn't happen, companies should have mechanisms in place that are able to spot toxic leaders and
mm.
actually do something about it. To me, this a death is an indication that there is some degree of toxicity in the company.
Got it.
Yes,
Totally.
sure.
Yes. So, Hari, building on that, right? Like, see, in a lot of companies, most of the work happens in very small teams, right? And with this work from home culture, you will not even see all of those conversations happening in the office. They may not happen in meeting rooms and stuff. What kind of mechanisms have you used in the past to make sure that those kind of surface up, that you're able to actually discover that, in that three-member team, the manager is really, really treating the team very badly, sort of a thing? Would
Very
love to hear
simple.
that.
This is
Hmm.
absolutely simple. Sometimes we
Hmm.
lose battles because of, not having the horseshoe nails. To me, every 3 months,
Hmm.
you need to take feedback from employees about their manager.
Hmm.
It's just a simple 5 questions feedback. In 2 minutes, every employee should be allowed to provide feedback on their managers on just 3 to 5 questions.
Hmm.
And that feedback to me is a very, very powerful indicator of the climate in a team. So if an employee rates, their manager on a 5 point scale on 5 questions, and the average score is 4.3, 4.9, it doesn't matter to me 4.9 or 4.5. But if I see a score which is 2.75, 3, to me those are red flags. And
Got it.
10% of managers in a company will turn out to have low scores. You
Hmm.
need to target these 10 managers in figuring out how they can get better very quickly. And you
Hmm.
should spotlight them and ensure they get better. Every 3 months, you put this mechanism in place, get feedback on simple 5 questions, not a comprehensive survey. Most managers will be on their toes and they will refrain from demonstrating toxic behaviors.
Got it. But Hari, do you think that these surveys end up being actually transparent and honest? I mean, I would imagine. So, for example, I've seen like in consulting, for example, the teams are usually like three members, right? One manager, two associates, sort of a thing, and they work together for a year. Are I'm again guessing that this matter of the culture that you've set up in the company, but do you think employees are comfortable going and rating their manager low in that smaller setup because the manager would know who that was who kind of raised that sort of a thing?
Yeah, so I mean, these are all tactics around execution, which is if a
Hmm.
manager just has one team member and the manager is provided feedback, the manager clearly knows who is provided this
Yeah,
feedback.
yeah,
But then,
yeah.
the conversation needs to be had with those managers who worry about, why this employee is provided the feedback rather than thinking about what can I do to get better.
Got it.
Sometimes when you tell a manager that this is the feedback that's been provided about you, some managers will say, I think this is reasonably accurate. Let
Hmm.
me fix these or tell
Hmm.
me more. But
Hmm.
there's a one small category of managers whose first question is, tell me who
Who said
gave you
that?
this feedback. To me,
Yeah.
that's a big red flag about those kind
Yeah.
of people.
Yeah, understood, understood. And one last question, Hari. Some of the things that we spoke about today, how have you implemented in your current company? What are the specific things that you've done, sort of a thing? Would love to hear about that, given we spoke about your company as well.
Yes, so as I told, every single lever, which
Hmm.
is the three categories of problems, this horseshoe nails, identify by figuring out what's not going well, meet teams, and identify hidden talent, identify people who are good who have been sidelined because of political maneuvering within the company, identify leaders who are not aligned with your transformational goals,
Hmm.
and bring in deep clarity of thought across the organization through multiple conversations. So be in touch with the people, identify the smart guys who are languishing in a corner, bring them up, let them speak, give them forums where they can speak, unleash the best people in the team, and begin to sideline those who are creating negative feelings within the company. And amongst the leaders, find everybody who is not a top performer, because I would say, if you classify people in terms of performance and leadership into three categories: the red, amber, and the green. Red is, not a great good leader at all. Amber is okay, but green is
Hmm.
awesome. You should have in the leadership team everybody who's a green. If you have a red, that red either needs to go or needs to very quickly change. If you have
Got it.
everybody who moves from red to amber, amber to green, then you're on the right way.
Understood. And I'm guessing that some of these things you would have a regular cadence, a rhythm for this. So every quarter you're kind of
Yes.
running some of these programs and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Right? Similar to that. Great. Understood. Understood. I think that's it, Hari. We're almost to the end of the time in any case, but I think we'll close it here. Thank you so much for your time, Hari. This